Hmm. 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 Alrighty then, this is the first unveiling of Wither. I take that back. I introduced it about a year and 3 months ago by way of what I would be working on, and here it is a year and 3 months later. Many versions and iterations later, lots of editing. Still a little bit of ways to go, but again, after a year and 3 months of silence regarding this project, I figure I need to share some stuff with you, and if nothing else, I can get some valuable feedback from you guys in theory, hopefully constructive in nature, that will allow me to fix anything that's broken with this, etc. So the cover may or may not please some of you. It is subject to change, but where's the camera at? Here we go. This is what we're looking at. That is the witch who you need to defeat the evil boss battle. And again, I like it, but if I put it out there, and in doing so it would be for free, but I want it to be inviting while still being my own thing, and maybe I could better compromise with that. But this is what we're going with. This is what I've had for a while. And yeah, so what I plan to do is, and I say plan to do because it may end up different from what I intend, is to read through these rules. Now, I was, again, as I mentioned in the last video, going hot and heavy on this, and I had to step back because I was just making myself insane. And it's been a couple weeks now, which is interesting because I can come at this with fresh eyes now and see what makes sense, what doesn't. Approach this from a potentially newbie player and see how it goes. So I'm going to read through a lot of stuff, not everything, but a lot, and try and set this up and run through a little bit of this for you. This is just a PDF version that I've downloaded via email and got on the iPad here. I haven't yet to this day to print anything paper form by way of Wither. So here we go. A deep wound is opened in the forest, and from this gash a deadly evil is spilling out into the land, causing everything in its path to wither and die. You and your party have been summoned to enter the darkness and destroy the source of this misery. Wither is a dungeon crawl tabletop role-playing game that can be played alone or with others. Your party of 4 adventurers must make their way through 6 levels of ascension, fighting monsters, searching for hidden doors, finding items, and avoiding traps in order to locate the tomb of the Witch of Woe and destroy her forever. What did she ever do to you? Let's begin. You will need 6-sided dice, which I have, and 1 each, that probably should be changed, of 8, 4, 10, 12, and 20. So basically all your typical, traditional, conventional, orthodox dice. As well as a standard deck of playing cards. Now, my approach to this could have been made easier for myself, that is to say, by doing what I normally do with the chit pull system, and I have any number of things that I can use to do that. But again, when I put this out there in the world, not everybody, I understand, will have access to what I do. So I tried to think of and come up with common household items that are easily accessible that would facilitate play. Yeah, so that would include a deck of playing cards, a chessboard, and the cards I would say are mandatory. The chessboard is not mandatory. It just helps. Scrabble pieces, again, not mandatory, but helpful. Your party starts on the exploration grid. This grid represents an overview of the entire dungeon complex, with each playing card abstractly representing either a small, medium, or large room, corridor, or trap. Consists of 36 playing cards in a 6x6 grid. Your party chooses a card on the bottom row to start on and works its way up to the top row, where it must find the Witch of Woe and defeat her in battle. Henceforth, rows will be read as levels. We'll get more into the exploration grid as we go on. Armor, I give a breakdown of how that works. basic numerical system with each number represent the number of dice that can be rolled in a kind of defensive roll when attacked. Hit points are fairly self-explanatory. So exploration, during the exploration phase, you move orthogonally, not diagonally, one square at a time across the 6x6 exploration grid of face-down playing cards. And the card value. Movement generally occurs in a left or right manner within a particular level, while upward movement into the next level will only occur when a hidden door is found. The party may not re-enter an exited level. There is no turning back. And I think there are one or two exceptions to that by way of random events. From a standard deck of playing cards, you're going to remove all face cards from the deck. The face cards are used to create the monster deck, and then that each face card will coincide with a particular monster type. Combine the remaining cards, that would be 4 suits of ace through 10, to create the exploration deck. I've already done that off camera here. So you shuffle your exploration deck and your monster deck thoroughly and place them face down. So here's our, again, let's go to this side. There's our exploration deck and our monster deck. Yes. Note, while the exploration deck consists of 40 cards, only 36 are placed. So yes, you will have some left over. From the exploration deck, construct a 6x6 grid of face-down cards that will function as the exploration grid. Choose one of the 6 cards in the first level to enter. Upon entering a card, turn it face up. This will result in one of 4 possibilities, and we'll get to that after I set this up. Let's try see if we can go here. 1, 2, make sure this is all on camera. And it's not. Cool. What about here? 1, 2, yes. I can go as low as that. I think 3, 4, 5, 6, yes. And you're going to do this 6 times for each level. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this, again, is your abstracted dungeon entirety. When there's an encounter, we zoom in on either this hex grid, not hex grid, this square grid, or I can bust out even the dungeon tiles as needed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is probably not all on camera. Now we're not going to need, I'm not going to go through all of this, so we won't need the top portion in camera necessarily. And the monitor is behind me, so I can't tell just out of the corner of my eye where we're at yet with this. So yeah, we're all there. It's not pretty, but it functions. That's our 6x6 exploration grid. Got it? We will pick a card at the bottom to start in and make our way up level by level. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the final level. Let's bring this back down. So when we flip a card, determining on what card we flip determines an aspect of the dungeon. So hearts and diamonds are corridors. Clubs can be a small or a medium room. Spades are a large room, and ace is a trap. At least that's what I have so far. By way of ambient noises, you may hear rain pelting against the window unit. You may hear the window unit itself, and or you may hear A, cat, B, my neighbor, or C, cars rolling down the road with bass. This is constant here. If the result is a large room, construct an 8x8 room. And again, that would be an 8x8 grid here, or with whatever you choose to use, for instance the chessboard as recommended earlier. If the result is a small/medium or room or corridor, roll on the appropriate table to determine the size and configuration, then conduct an encounter roll. Alright, if the result is a trap, no room construction is necessary. You simply consult the traps table. When a card is flipped, If that card is moved onto again, an encounter roll is not required, nor can a sprung trap be re-sprung. So once you flip a card and resolve it, that card is essentially dead thenceforth. If you do reach the top/final level, continue to conduct a hidden door search. This time, however, rather than enter a new level, the party will encounter the witch when the hidden door is found. The witch encounter always occurs in an 8x8 room, regardless of the card the party is on. Encounter. Now here is where I have pumped the maximum, or close to, the maximum amount of information in 2 dice that you will ever see or hear. Truth be told. So when we go onto a card, we're going to roll 2 dice 6. And I call these the encounter dice. Now we need 2 different colors, 1 white die ideally, and 1 colored die. Doesn't matter as long as it's different from the white die, as I have here. Let's see. And you're going to do this when you flip the card, it's a trap. So if the result is less than or equal to the card number, an encounter occurs. Now this will help you understand why I chose ace was essentially 1 through, 10? And that allows us to have a kind of statistical bell curve with the 2d6 and all that stuff. Alright. If the result is less than or equal to the card number, an encounter occurs. While you will need to draw a card from the monster deck to determine what type of monster appears, the number of monsters appearing depends on the original encounter die roll and the mode of difficulty you have chosen. So I think that's now 2 pieces of information. Roll 2d6 to determine if an encounter occurs. If it does, the original die roll will also tell you how many of that monster shows up. For example, if you've chosen easy mode and your party moves onto a card with a value of 8, you roll a 5, prompting 3 monsters to appear, as 3 is the maximum amount that will appear in easy mode. So there's a cap on whichever mode you choose, easy, medium, or difficult. And the numbers are significantly lower on the number of monsters that can appear in easy mode versus difficult mode, which has a possible number of 8 monsters that could potentially appear. Again, these numbers are subject to change based on play testing. And I've got some caveats to that based on monster type, referring to trolls, giants, and the Goblin King. There is a minimum number that will only ever appear, irregardless, which I argue is a word, of the original dice roll. Encounters are resolved on the battle grid. At least that's what I'm calling it. Now, when we have an encounter, we come off of here and go to our battle grid, which would be, again, the gridded map here, or the chessboard, or tiles, whatever your heart desires. It's up to you. And I do provide a gridded map with a faint imprint of the witch on it, which we'll get to print and cut out if you like, by way of aesthetic theme. So monster type. While the quantity of monsters appearing is determined by the encounter die roll, the type of monster appearing is determined by drawing a card from the monster deck, remember that thing, and then discarding it. So once we have our encounter, we have to abide by particular placement. So adventurer placement, which your party consists of adventurers, hence adventurer placement. You must place each party member and monster. If the encounter is taking place in a room or double-wide corridor, place each party member in one of 4 central squares located at the bottom of the battle grid as demonstrated below. And I have images that describe this. Based on the corridor or room type, with a red square describing where you will place your adventurers. If the encounter is taking place in a single wide corridor, a marching order must be determined with one adventurer in the lead, followed by each successive party member. Then it gets to monster placement. When placing monsters, roll 2 dice to determine where they appear. For an 8x8 room, roll 1d8 for horizontal and vertical placement. For a 6x6 room, roll 1d6, and for a 4x4 room, roll 1d4. So this is just basic random placement for the monsters. And then I give an example for that. When rolling to place monsters in a corridor, determine if the monsters appear in front of or behind the party. Now, that isn't going to be an issue because of the initial placement of our adventurers disallows for monster rear placement. So I need to mark that. There's one thing. Monster rear placement. I mean, if you're savvy enough, you would figure it out, but it needs to be explained. Where was I? In the rear. Okay, the final placement. Okay. The surprise is rolled. The monsters appear behind the party. Roll a die to determine how many spaces away from the party the monster appears and if appearing on the left or right side of a double wide corridor. Then I go into surprise, which I won't go into here in this video. Initiative, which I use something that I've used for quite some time, and that is the numbered chits. And for however many total combatants you have, so 4 for our party, and say 3 monsters, you would need 7 chits, numbered 1 through 7. And then you put them in a cup, shake them up, and randomly draw a chit and assign it to each adventurer and monster, and that determines the order in which combat occurs, actions can take place. Talk about running away and talk about how you pretty much can't do that. Then we get to hidden doors. In order to ascend to the next level, a hidden door must be located. When conducting an encounter roll, now remember that original roll, which we already have 2 pieces of information we've drawn from. Here is a third. Note the result of the colored die. On a roll of 1, a hidden door to the next level has been found through which the party may enter. By way of logical deduction, if a hidden door isn't found after exploring 5 cards, it will always default to the final 6th card of that level, regardless of your die roll result. All monsters must be eliminated from a square before the party may exit through a hidden door. We have things you can find. Strewn throughout the dungeon are 12 things. At least what's that? That's what I have thus far. When rolling for an encounter, if doubles are rolled, a thing is found. So here's a 4th piece of information for our original 2d6 encounter dice roll. If doubles are rolled, a thing is found. You consult the things table to determine what it is. I guess I should say, I could have added more things, but I chose the approach that quality over quantity. It's better to have 12 things that make sense, that are useful within the game, rather than 24 things that are loosely related to what's going on. Time. I had a bit of a time, pun intended, trying to insert time into this thing. Now, I wanted it in here because it adds an element of angst. Having to complete something within a specific time frame just adds to the pressure. But then what? So if you fail to reach the 6th row and find the final hidden door by before time runs out, what? That's game. What happens? That just seems too silly to me. So what I did was, the witch, and this ties into the story, the narrative or plot built into the game. But essentially, the witch, when you first enter the bottom row, has virtually no hit points. And each card you enter, you're going to add 1 to the witch's total hit points. So this is my abstract way of fitting time in here and having it be somewhat meaningful rather than just be in here to be in here. So by the time you get to the final hidden door, on average, the witch is going to have about 18 hit points. That will vary. It could be more or less depending, but that allows, again, some sort of time element to be in here. Now, is there a way to expedite time? How do you do that? How can you rush through here if it's a random roll for each card you enter? Well, you could argue that. There's no real way to skillfully save time or rush or even, I guess you could dawdle. I don't know why you would want to, because you're allowing the witch to gain more hit points. Anyway, that's my representation of time within the game. The game. We have something I call the witch's shadow. I think I was calling this the ethereal witch, and then it changed to ethereal dragon, then it changed back to witch, and I'm now calling it the witch's shadow. This all stems or is inspired from oh my god, I can't even think of the name now. What is that game from the 80s, the Dark Tower? The original one? Now they remade it, and I have played that at work. We have that. Yeah, I think it's Dark Tower, right? Where you have this randomly roaming dragon throughout the territories that you navigate, and if he encounters you, some bad stuff happens, and you can't kill the dragon if you find a magic sword. I love that. I borrowed it mostly and put it in here. Now it's the witch's shadow, which is haunting the 6x6 grid, and random rolls determine where the witch moves each, I guess you call it turn. Every time you move on to a new card, you're going to roll for the movement placement of the witch's shadow, which is a manifestation or aspect of the witch. You kill the witch's shadow, the physical witch still exists, and you haven't harmed it any. But if the witch's shadow finds you, bad things happen, right? And then there is a shadow sword in here that you can find, and if the witch's shadow attacks you and you have that witch's sword, the witch's shadow is automatically defeated. You don't have to roll for anything. It's just automatic. So I've got that in here, again, to add tension as you're moving through the dungeon. Kind of the ultimate wandering monster, if you will. Then we have actions. I went back and forth on this as well. It was a little more complicated than it has become. There were things I would like to add to this, but again, I want it to be playable, so I had to trim some fat. Essentially, each model may conduct one action during its turn per combat round. You can move, you can fight, you can cast a spell, and y'all are going to hate me and probably unsubscribe when you hear how I've done magic in this thing. We'll get to that. Available actions include attack, cast, spell, move, or recover, which recover is like a rally. If multiple attack dice can be rolled by a monster or adventurer, these attacks can be distributed among multiple targets and still counted as one action. I may have to adjust that as well. For example, an adventurer that can strike with 4 attack dice could roll 2 versus one monster and 2 versus another monster, assuming they're both within attack range. Rolling defend dice is an automatic reaction to an attack and does not count as an action. Nor can a monster or adventure become spent if a 1 is rolled. Did I mention that already? I don't think I've mentioned that. Well, we'll get to that. If 1 or more of the dice rolled to resolve an action is a 1, so you will roll To move, you will roll. To fight, you will roll. To rally, you're rolling to do any action, right? You'll roll to cast a spell, I believe. No, you won't. You do an initial roll, but then we'll get to that. Point is, if one or more of the dice rolled to resolve an action are a 1, the adventure, any of them, if you roll 5 dice and there's a 1, that adventurer or monster can do nothing else that round. So what does that mean? That means the more dice you roll in an attack, the more likely you are to become spent, if you will. The less dice you roll, the less likely you are to become spent. Where does this idea derive? It comes from Conflict of Heroes, the latest edition with the spent die roll. That's where this comes from. When rolling attack dice, if attacks are distributed among multiple targets, the attacker will not become spent until each attack is resolved, blah, blah, blah. Then I talk about movement on the battle grid. I'm sure y'all can imagine what that entails. Again, these are roll to move stats. Portage, how much somebody can carry. We have obstacles, which are things that, obstructions that can be placed or are automatically placed in a room depending on the size of the room. I think 8 by 8 and 6 by 6 each have 4 columns in a room. So this allows for monsters or characters to hide behind something, especially when it comes to missile attacks, instead of it just being one gigantic empty room. So how does combat work? For now, it takes place on the battle grid and consists of attacking an adjacent model. We already know all that. To attack, you're going to roll, it's fistful of dice. You're going to roll a number of d6 equal to the attacker's attack value. I tried for a long time, as hard as I could, to make this a 2d6 combat system. I really tried. And I felt like what I came up with was doable, but it was awkward. So I rehauled it. And it's buckets of dice. It just works. I mean, it's not pretty, but the buckets of dice thing does work. At least for what we're trying to do here. So modifier, you roll a number of d6 equal to the attacker's attack value, and you're going to modify that by adding or subtracting 1 or more dice. That's your modifiers. And then I have for each 4, 5, or 6 rolled, a hit is achieved for each that's in melee. For each 5 or 6 rolled during a ranged attack, a hit is achieved. And again, when a 1 is rolled during an attack, the adventurer monster may resolve that attack, but is spent afterwards. They can do nothing else that round. So yes, anybody that has thought of this, you could potentially have somebody that just gets lucky rolls and does not become spent, and everybody else is, and he's just wandering around hacking and slashing. Well, that's how it goes. So we have trauma, which is essentially my way of saying morale. And for those of you unfamiliar with what that is, each party member or monster that takes 1 or more hits in an attack adds 1 trauma hit. A party or member or monster that has more trauma hits than its current number of hit points becomes traumatized, causing it to move 2 squares away from the closest foe and is unable to do anything until it recovers. Now, where does this come from? This doesn't come from nothing. This is the morale system used in Platoon Leader and Advanced Platoon Leader, the games that I designed and self-published years ago. Works well, so that's what I do. Recover, which is essentially, again, rallying, how that works. Experience points. These are based on, now this is, I guess you could call it a one-shot. You do this, you're done. I mean, you can do it again. It's got replayability. But it's the same thing, right? So the experience points are kind of wishy-washy in here. I mean, I guess you could level up as you go, and that would be beneficial, but this is not something that you will need to accumulate experience points for, and I'll have it carry over to the next adventure. This is the adventure. This is it. And what I have is, for now, for every 10, and the 10 is, I have a number of highlighted things in here for things that are subject to change, and typically numbers. For every 10 hit points worth of monsters eliminated, an adventurer's hit points will increase by 1, and this is in addition to the total he started with. Symbiotic suits. What, pray tell, in the hey-hoo are symbiotic suits? Well, it's handy. I mentioned earlier that the deck of cards thing lends itself to approachability because most households have one, but also the cards themselves are perfect for generating information, allowing an information-based system to bounce off of it because of the colors, the numbers, the suits, the odds and evens, however you want to look at it. So I came up with a way to further allow these cards to have an effect as you go through by way of systemic information. So what am I talking about? Each adventurer, your thief, you've got your 4 primordial guys, right? Thief, warrior, or barbarian, if you will, wizard, or magic user, or cleric, however you want to look at it, and dwarf. Now, each of these, if you have an encounter on their symbiotic suit, they get a bonus, right? So if the thief is on a spades card, he's immune to trauma. If the warrior is on a clubs card, he gets +1 die when attacking. And this represents kind of a, I guess be thinking of like the elements, the celestial alignment of stars, all of this stuff. Certain areas in this dungeon will be more or less beneficial to a particular adventurer based on that adventurer's type. The wizard, he gets a +3 die roll modifier to magical factors, a magical factors roll. And the dwarf gets +1 die when defending on a diamonds. And I probably should put hearts for the wizard, because I don't have hearts there. Wizard, hearts, symbiotic suit. So I call that their symbiotic suits. Consider doing likewise for the monsters, but then again, you want this to be playable, and it's in here. Does it need to be in here for every monster and every character? No. It just adds bulk, unnecessary bulk. Then we get to magic, and again, I wanted something different because magic, wizards, etc., it just seems to be the same old stuff rehashed. You have this, and I talk about this in the designer notes I put in here towards the back. You have this kind of like recipe book, and based on a wizard's level, who determines which of these so-called recipes or spells he can use, etc. It all seems to be so generic and cliche. It works for a number of things, but I don't know that every single thing needs to be this way. Why can't somebody do something different, be brave and do something different? Well, here we go. I call these magical factors, and this is how the wizard works. While a wizard may roll 1d6 to physically attack a monster because he does have a one-handed sword, the wizard's primary function lies in his ability to manipulate outcomes. That is to say, magic. His quote-unquote spells consist of modifying die rolls. That is how magic works in here for the wizard. At the beginning of an encounter, you're going to roll 2d6. Any encounter you have, beginning, roll 2 dice. The resulting number is the amount of magical factors the wizard has summoned from the multiverse to use for this particular encounter. So when an adventurer or monster attacks, defends, or attempts to recover, one or more of these magical factors may be used to manipulate the die result, right? So and subconsciously, I don't know if that was partially where this came from. Again, in the board game Conflict of Heroes, you have the command action track, and I thought about this afterwards, and I thought I've basically stuck a command action track in here. For those of you that don't know what that means, it's not important. To do this, the wizard must see his target. That's standard, right? During his turn, the wizard will then declare who the target is. Now, this target could be a monster or a fellow adventurer. Then he's going to specify beforehand how many factors he wishes to spend and what action die roll he intends to modify. So the quote-unquote spell is going to kick in during that target's turn and modifies the respective dice roll. The wizard cannot cast a spell on himself, and a wizard can never become spent as a result of rolling to determine magical factors summoned or modifying die rolls. So there's your balance for him kind of being arguably weak. He gains the benefit of not having to worry about becoming spent. A wizard may not cast a spell in the same turn in which he is attacked. So think of it as him concentrating on what he's doing, and if that concentration is disrupted, then goes the spell. And a cast spell is nullified if the wizard is attacked before the spell takes effect. Again, if his concentration is broken. Once all magical factors have been depleted for that encounter, mind you, not that turn or round. And turns are defined as the individual actions a monster or adventurer takes within a round. A round consists of each adventurer and monster taking one action. If all magical factors have been depleted, no more will be available until the next encounter. Magical factors may not be saved and used at a later time. Add +3 to the wizard's magical factor die roll if currently on his symbiotic suit, which is what? That's right, hearts. That is essentially the rules, okay? I don't plan on adding anything to that or necessarily subtracting, but there may be some editing, modification, clarification. That brings us to some charts. First one is our things chart. I have 12 things you can find, as mentioned. So when you roll the dice, if the dice signify that a thing is in the room or whatever, roll 1d12 and determine what it is. Traps, we have 8 traps. If you're on a trap card, you're going to roll 1d8 to determine what's going on with that trap. Then we have what I call, for lack of a better term, random events. I love random events in games, always have. It adds flavor, character. And I'm trying my best to get 20 random events. I'm currently at 10. And I petered out. Now, you could say it should be easy to come up with things to put in here. But again, I want them to be quality things that make sense with what's going on in the game, and not just random. May be a bit of a misnomer, okay? The order or variety of event that can occur is random, but the events themselves are not necessarily random. There are things that could or would occur as we move through this dungeon. Currently got 10 of those. At least I'd like to get to 12. And some of these, mind you, you're thinking, wow, 10 isn't very many, but some of these are very elaborate events. Like if you get random event 7, set aside a good 10 minutes to roll through various rooms and make your way through to the end and not get twisted around and end up back in the other room. Or, no joke, random event 7, if there is the potential for your party to enter a void from which there is no escape. The game's over. They're lost forever, suspended between time and space. Now, the possibility of that happening is minuscule, but it's there, right? And again, that adds to the tension of, oh my God, we're stuck in this thing. We have to get through it. Hopefully, we don't die. What more tension could you want there? So those are 3 charts. Then it gets to our room/corridor creation, how we, depending on what card we flip over, how we can create our rooms and corridors. Now, if you choose to print off and cut out the grid that I've included in this game, you can lay that out and just use blank sheets of paper to place over it to get your hallways or specific rooms. That's what I describe in here. Then I have a little chart on attacking and defending. I've got our monster types based on your monster deck. If you remember, we have what do we have? We have skeletons, wolves, spiders, wraiths, orcs, goblins, trolls, giants, a goblin king, and of course, the Witch of Woe. We'll get to why this bothers me. It works, it's fine, but we'll get to that. Critical hit is a common thing within Dungeons & Dragons, maybe a little too common. I do have critical hit worked in here, but it is related to a random event. Now, there is a red gem you need to find that, ironically, has 20 sides. So there's kind of this like meta thing going on within the game. There are at least 2 or 3 things that kind of make you scratch your head, and it pulls you out of the immersion and makes you, how do I describe this? Contemplate the fact that you're playing a game. So I'll go ahead and spoiler one of the, I forget which it is, your party stumbles upon a table with books and charts and things on it and dice, and they open up one of the books and it's describing all kinds of monsters. Well, what is that? They've essentially found a Dungeons and Dragons game, right? I don't come right out and say that, but that's kind of a meta thing baked into the game that, you know, it's for funsies and shows that the game doesn't take itself too seriously, and it adds kind of, again, like a weird twist. So the critical hit that's in here is the 20-sided red gem, right, which is essentially 20-sided die outside of the game that you can roll when battling the Witch of Woe, and every time you roll to attack the witch, you roll that d20, and a result of 20 automatically kills it. So you could get lucky and find the 20-sided red gem, which will help you defeat the witch. Then we have the Witch of Woe AI, which I had initially assigned to all the monsters, but again, it was bogging down the combat system way too much. So I reserved it solely for the witch. That way, yes, it's still in here, and it doesn't significantly slow the game. So how does that work? Well, it's a long-winded way of saying something rather simple once you wrap your head around it. The witch is unpredictable in combat, right? She may distribute her attacks among each adventurer or focused on just one. At the start of each turn, you'll need to roll for each adventurer to see how many times he is attacked. So the witch is allowed 5 attack dice. And these could be divided up any number of ways depending on your AI die roll. So if there are 4 adventurers, you're going to assign a numerical designation of 1 to 2 for the first one, 3 to 4 for the second one, etc. And you're going to roll 1d8 5 times. Or just, you could roll 5d8 if you have them. And assign the attacks accordingly. So for example, if the die results are 1, 3, 3, 6, and 8, the first adventurer would be attacked once, the second adventurer twice, the third adventurer will be attacked once, and the fourth adventurer once. Now, the witch can attack that is to say, the witch can reach anybody regardless of where they are in this 8x8 room. She doesn't even need to move. So she'll always have the option of who to attack, how many times, etc. Now this is obviously, I should probably add that, really none of this stuff is mandatory. I mean, I suppose some of it should be, or what are you playing if you're not doing what is at least recommended by way of the rules. But specifically this AI stuff, and I may add this later on, it is not mandatory, right? This is certainly optional, but I think it adds some flavor to the witch. Then we give our breakdown of each adventurer, what they carry, or at the start of the game, how many things that counts as by way of carrying. There are stats, so that would be their attack stat, defense stat, hit points, and move dice. What do they roll to move? And then we have our, I don't see why I couldn't share this. I may have read this over a year ago, but it's changed somewhat. And this is what you'll read before you start the game. So I call this the opening, and more specifically, entrance song. And this is the narrative organs. These are the narrative organs that add the plot and structure, the flesh to the thing, to the skeleton. So it says, you sit silently upon a stump, watching the sky, waiting for the middle moon to pass before the sun. Your dark green cloak flaps about in an anonymous breeze when a song suddenly finds its way onto your memory's stage. Quote, O my children, dare not dither, lest ye fall ill and slowly wither. End quote. And then you're back there again, your grandmother softly singing that old children's rhyme as you lay in bed. How did the rest of it go? It's no good, long since forgotten. The moral had something to do with idle hands and getting into trouble, but you never really thought much about it until now. You see yourself alone in the forest swinging a wooden sword at imagined foes, a long day spent dreaming and telling stories to the trees because they were such excellent listeners. Just staring into the vastness of the wood until the sun started to lower itself. Then head down the long winding path and make your way home just before dark. Any later and it was always the same. Quote, you have no business out there at night. That's when all kinds of creepers, crawlers and such come out. Being there then, feeling that way, you naively thought it would last forever, but forever is a child's toy of a word, and all toys end up traumatized in the end. Oop, that should say broken. I did an auto replace. Let me mark that, traumatized. And it auto replaced that. Alright, so there's another little thing. Sorry about that. Forever is a child's toy of a word, and all toys end up broken in the end. Yes, the forest was changing. The green was fading, the leaves shriveling, the sounds quieting, and the passing winds carried upon them the distinct odor of an innocence dying. You turn your gaze toward the opening, just beyond two giant oaks, and nestled within a maze of brambles, thorns, and vines was the entrance, looking like a gaping mouth of darkness. It was just like in your dreams. Even the little wood thrush was there, laying lifeless at your feet. Strangely, it was as if the wound-like slit had always been there. Within dreams it reeked of familiarity, but you refused to enter. Now you find yourself wide awake, being drawn in closer and closer still, pausing momentarily just before the threshold of entry. Then just as it did in your dream, the day turns into night as the middle moon stops in front of the sun, causing a ring of fire to appear in the sky. It's time. The torches are lit, then without looking back, you tighten the grip on your sword and disappear into the unknown depths of that nothingness, the rest of your party following closely behind. There's a little bit more there, which I won't read. And then there's a mid-game, which you read before entering the 4th level for more flavor. There is an end-game that you will read just before battling the witch with some monologue. Then, depending on if you defeat the witch or not, you will have, which I have yet to write, one of two epilogues. One named New Dawn Stays and the other named New Dawn Fades. And if any of you out there know Joy Division, you'll know where I got New Dawn Fades from. Wonderful song. Then we have our cards for each adventure, which learned my lesson in the past, trying to go beyond what I'm capable when it comes to artwork. So to play it safe, that's what we got for the cards that you will print and cut out for your adventure. I didn't try to do any artwork by way of, again, a wizard or a thief. It just, I would never be able to do it, and I would have to use AI to do it, and I don't want to do that. The only thing that I used AI for is the witch herself on the cover of this thing, and I specified what I wanted, and lo and behold, I don't know if I got lucky or what. This thing pumped out pretty much what my imagination had come up with. I was fairly surprised. So that's why I've stuck with that. But and there's nothing else in here that I have used AI for by way of ideas or the writing. This is all from me. And that's another reason it's been a year and 3 months coming. Then I explain the adventure cards. I talk about miniatures, why they can be beneficial, helpful in keeping track of things on the battle grid. Uh, but also mention they're not mandatory, right? And one of the things that will come in handy, and I don't imagine every household has one, but they're easily come by. And even if you don't use it for this game, invest in a Scrabble game. One, because it's a great game, but B, or number two rather, because you can use these Scrabble pieces for so much. They're basically information retainers. And if you don't have figures, and I again, due to my lack of ability when it comes to certain artwork, I don't know that I can come up with counters, if you will, that have the artwork of monsters on them and everything. I don't know that I would ever be able to come up with something that I could live with. So that may not be in here. You will need, ideally, some miniatures that you can use, or these Scrabble pieces, which, you know, W could represent wizard and D could represent dwarf, etc. However you want to do it. Then we have our designer notes, which I've already kind of broken down. I say Dark Tower, it is Black Tower. Or is it Dark Tower? Black Tower? Whatever the hell that game was with the tower that was mechanical. You know what I'm talking about. Oh, and I should add that this thing started as a single adventurer going through a dungeon. But that seemed too... That didn't seem... Well, it seemed too one-dimensional, right? And I thought, well, how can I add 4 different aspects to his personality to reflect the 4 prototypes? And then I just said, well, just heck with it. Just do the 4. Again, the 4 being the holy quadrinity, the wizard, dwarf, warrior, and thief. I talk a little bit about them. The wizard's magic may seem strange, but I wanted something different and perhaps a little more grounded in reality. Many may still yearn for those spells that read like recipes in a cookbook, and, well, I have good news. There are a ton of games out there that offer this, so help yourself. And another thing I will touch upon, which I said I would, perhaps my greatest wrestling match was with the theme. I wanted a narrative-driven story, but settled for a narrative-assisted one instead. So while I have come up with, at least to the best of my ability, I think, a story that makes sense in concert with what you're doing, I wish I could have done better. I wish there was more narrative in here. But at the end of the day, you know, how much do you want to read and how much do you want to play? I don't know. There's always that give and take. Replayability is something that I took seriously into consideration with this thing. Again, the structure of this game with the cards also lends itself to replayability. So, right, each time you shuffle the deck, lay these out, you play this 15 times, you're probably going to get a different game each time. You never know which card is going to be what by way of encounter or a symbiotic suit, or where that hidden door is going to be. So each run through will be different. I guarantee it. And then the other thing, I'll just go ahead and read it. The monsters that inhabit the dungeon are generic, no doubt. And I had every intention of remedying this, but alas, I could never settle on how to effectively do so, especially considering I have no art department to help me out. So I stuck with what we all know, for a troll invokes pretty much the same mental image no matter who you are. Now, that is another thing that will probably haunt me, whether or not I release this as is or do end up, in fact, reskinning this, if you will, to make it more its own thing instead of such a cliche, generic goblins, orcs, trolls, right? There's so much of that. It's tired. I understand. But that may be what it has to be. And until I could come up with something that coincides with 6 levels of ascension to get through, and I've touched upon a number of possibilities, but none that that really interested me enough to push forward with the idea. I just stuck with what we all know and are familiar with. But it would be cool to create my own monsters and their own individual descriptions and their own individual specific different abilities, etc. I may or may not do that, but we'll see. I probably will leave it as it is. But that problem, or I don't even know if it's necessarily a problem, I think that will always haunt me regardless. So I'm going to talk about time. And then finally I say there was so much more I could have put in here, but each thing you add demands you tweak 10 other things to accommodate it. So it's like whack-a-mole, right? You lock down one thing, you inadvertently disrupt something else and have to fix that, and then you inadvertently disrupt something else. Besides, there's nothing more annoying than a designer adding ingredients to a game simply because she can. Truly, the harder task is not in the volume of content required to create a game, but keeping that volume to a consumable limit for players. Ultimately, I tried to remind myself that less is more, and while I feel that I've succeeded in this respect, some may in fact disagree. You would also do well to remind yourself that this is my first attempt at a fantasy game, which it is. I'm not trying to levy an excuse for any perceived lack of design ability. I'm just saying. An index, which will be fun to come up with, but I feel it should be in here, probably a table of contents as well. Then a quick reference sheet, which at the end of the day may not exactly be as quick as one would like, but this is, let's see, 2 pages, so front and back, of handy dandy things that you need to know and may often use. And then our battle grid, which we have in, I guess this is basically just a podcast. It's all you guys have stared at is just decks of cards on a table, and I apologize. And I could have moved the camera such that you see what I'm reading, but forgive me. So this is the battle grid, 8x8, and it's big enough that you need to print out 4 pages, cut and paste them together. That's how I did this. And again, it has the image of the witch. And then what I'm calling Shield Biter games with this guy here. Our little Viking from the Lewis Chessman set. Shield Biter games. That's what I'm calling this whole endeavor. So that's it. And thus far, we've got about 40 pages. And again, only, let's see, there's 11. I would say 10. Only about 9 pages of these are hardcore rules, right? The rest are charts, your battle grid, your adventure cards, quick reference sheet, lots of narrative. So I'm fairly proud of that as well. This is something that, unless I'm completely wrong about, you should be able to hop right in and get going. You shouldn't have to spend your entire afternoon on the rules. You should be able to grasp this fairly quickly and be able to hop in relatively fast and get playing. And that's what I wanted. I wanted something that is playable, not something that is so unnecessarily complicated. It may be impressive in that respect, but nobody's inclined to play it. So what's the point of that, right? So that is Wither, and a year and 3 months off and on in the making. I'm very close to finishing up. This needs more play testing. There's some finer points I need to make even finer. I need to make some finer points finest. Little things, but they're there, and it's not done until I decide on these things, and that's probably the hardest part. And the answers come through, again, play testing on some of these numbers, etc. So I didn't do anything but read. So if we chose, just real quick before I let you guys go, if we chose to enter this card, we would flip it over. It's a 6 of clubs, just to help keep track of what the hell's going on. We can place our guys on that card. 6 of clubs, right? So what do you need to do? Well, we'll go to encounter and see what it says. We roll 2d6. We got an 8. Alright, if the result is less than or equal to the card number, an encounter occurs. Is 8 less than or equal to 6? No, so no encounter occurs. It is not an A, so it's not a trap. Is that, is the hidden door there? Let's go back here. No, because our colored die is not a 1. So that, oh, did we get a thing? No, because we didn't get doubles. So see, all this information from just 2 dice. So then we would go to the next card, right? We'll go here. This will probably be an encounter because 9 is a high number. It's clubs. Symbiotic suit speaking, who would benefit from being on a clubs? Let's go back to the symbiotic suits and look that up. Clubs was the warrior. He gets a +1 die when attacking on a club suit. Let's roll that up. And we got a 9. What did I say, equal or less? So yes. If the result is less than or equal to the card number, an encounter occurs. So an encounter would occur on this card, and that would bring us to our monster deck. We draw a card, Jack of Clubs. What is a Jack of Clubs? Let's go all the way down and take a look. Monster type, Jack of Diamonds. No. Jack of Clubs, a troll. We've run into a troll in this room. Or is it a room? Well, now we have to determine. Is it a room? Is it a corridor? Let's go back up here. And remember to keep your original die roll handy. Don't toss those aside. You want to maintain that original roll because there's a significant amount of information you derive from that roll. Number of monsters appearing depends on the original encounter die roll. So how many trolls? Well, that also is amended because we can only have a maximum of 3 trolls. And so our dice roll is a 9. If it's equal or less than our card value by 1, that means there's 1. If it was equal or less than our card value by 2, well, then that would be 2 monsters. Now, where does this come from? This is was inspiration I derived from the Black Powder Napoleonic rule set for command rolls. Equal or less, depending on how much, determines how far you can move. That's where I got the idea for how many monsters. Where is this taking place? So where is that at? Monster placement, adventure placement, monster type. There we go. Nice place. Partner when encounter monsters. Period. Let me pause this and come back. Alright, so on our quick reference sheet it explains the room corridor size. So room, corridor, or trap. Well, it's not a trap because it's not an ace. It is a club, so that means this is going to be either a small or a medium room. So on our small medium room table we roll 1d6. Again, let's use a different die. We'll maintain our original roll here. Let's see what we get. Re-rolled a 3, so that's going to be a small room, which means 4x4. So we would construct, again, either on this grid with a dry erase marker, a 4x4 room, or use pieces of paper and border off the chessboard into a 4x4 room, or use these guys and create a 4x4 room. Then we would do our adventure and monster placement, and then go into combat, assign initiative chits, etc., etc., etc. Was there anything, literally any things in this room? Let's check that. I think if it was a doubles, there would be things in here. And it's not doubles, so probably negative on that. Where's our things chart? Counter, surprise, hidden door, time. Things. No. Doubles gets us a thing, so there's no things in there. And is the hidden door there? No, because of 1. There's not a 1 on our colored die. So that would be that. I'm not going to go through combat. It's fairly, I truly believe it's fairly straightforward. Whoever has the lowest initiative number would conduct an action that is, which could be moving closer towards a target, attacking that target. You roll a number of dice to attack, and the target would defend with a number of dice based on its armor, etc., and deduct hit points accordingly. Remember the possibility of becoming spent when you conduct an action if the colored die is a 1, I believe, how that works. And also remembering to 1 or more hits that are achieved, regardless if they are all defended or not, will act as 1 increment of trauma, and when that trauma level is higher than the number of hit points, that particular adventurer or monster is traumatized. You continue to fight until either all the monsters are dead, all the adventurers are dead, or all the monsters are traumatized. And we would do our Shadow Witch roll, which I forgot to do. We would have done 2 rolls since we have 2 new cards we've entered. Let me go to Shadow Witch, and then that'll be it. Each time the party enters a new card, note the result of the exploration roll. So again, another piece of information on our dice here. The colored die dictates how far to move the witch's shadow in an east-west direction, so left-right direction. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have a 5, so up-down would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the witch's shadow, which you could use whatever you want to represent that, would be here after moving on to the first card, pretending that that was our original roll, because it wasn't. And then on the second roll, we would have moved it again. So it's fairly random where this witch's shadow will end up, but I have played this where the witch's shadow has ended up on my card. And essentially you're attacked, right? I don't think anybody's killed, but you're attacked. And remember, there's the shadow sword that you can find to eradicate the witch's shadow once and for all, should you find it. There's other things in here. Again, this isn't 100% of what's in here, but what are we at now? We're at over an hour, and I mean, that's arguably long enough. So I think we'll leave it at that. Now, what I need from you guys is feedback, and I understand you have a limited perspective of what's going on here. You're just going by what I've explained, and I haven't explained everything. As well as could be explained through examples and, again, examples of play, etc. What does this sound like to you guys? Does this sound like anything you would be interested in, or am I wasting my time? What's going on there? And would you change, add, subtract anything? I mean, I may be asking a lot, but just feedback. It doesn't have to be world-changing feedback. Little things can mean as much as a big thing. So let me know there, and thanks for listening if you guys, anybody had listened all the way through to this point. But there's your first update since this thing's inception. I'm calling it Wither. It's been 1 year and 3 months in the making, off and on. A product of what I'm calling Shieldbiter Games. And hopefully within, I don't know, let's say by Christmas. Hopefully by Christmas I can put this thing out in the world and let people play it. Again, I don't plan to charge anything for it. I'm not trying to make money off of this. I just have fun doing it. And I enjoy hearing other people's experience with things I've designed, etc. So, all right, guys, I've rambled on long enough. Talk to you next time.